I'll call to order the committee meeting, governance, strategy, and city operations. So we do have a limited time for our business to be reviewed. I believe that.
We need to do a roll call first to start.
Okay, thank you for the reminder.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor McFarland?
Here.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Gibbs?
Here.
Councilor Ansel?
Here.
Councilor Moore?
Here.
So I do believe that the Livable Communities Committee wanted to present during part of our time.
I didn't see it on the agenda, so I told the people that we were going to add it to this. So,
Okay, I'm sorry for that confusion.
well, it's
Yeah.
my fault for not getting it
I
on the
think
agenda.
it was, just communication breakdown between the three of us.
And me too, I guess.
Yeah, Jeff.
So when are we, so when do
I don't know.
You ready?
Well, if somebody's here, why?
Yeah, okay,
you want
yeah,
to
they're
go
ready.
ahead with it?
We can use part of that time. We have a pretty lengthy agenda, so we're gonna try to cover that as quickly as possible, and then we'd be more than happy to hear from you. Just wanted to briefly, and what my way of kind of expediting the agenda will be to just ask for some brief updates from the CD department, and then without reading the items that we want to bring forward, because we've already reviewed them, just have a motion to move them to the agenda. And then we would have time for the Livables community representative to speak. So just some overall updates for the public, if you would, Director Miller, just where we are with the various items on the agenda, if you wouldn't mind coming forward.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with the DRI projects. For the Dock Street redevelopment, of course, the highest and best use study was done several months ago for the brownfield site down by the marina. The second piece of that is the demolition of the MLD buildings. KAS is currently completing the bid specifications for that demolition, and they will be released after review by city personnel. For the downtown grant program through the DRI, there is one property downtown that is currently out for bid. Two more will soon follow, and of course, those are the individual grants for private property owners, and several others are in various stages of approval. The streetscape and riverfront access project through the DRI, until the GEIS process is complete, no physical work will be completed this year. However, Saratoga Associates will be able to prepare and make ready all the to-be-done physical progress in the spring for the proposed arts park between Margaret Street and Durkee Street.
Now, do you know where Chasen's at in doing the GEIS?
Corporation Counsel, myself, and White and Burke recently reviewed a draft scoping document for the GEIS. That went back to Chasen for editing. We hope to have that back early next week. We'll send it out to a few other people for their review. Once that's done, we will present it to the council. On a certain Thursday, you will announce a public meeting to discuss that scoping session or discuss that scoping document. It'll be released to the public, usually 5 or 10 days notice. The public will be available, and they'll come in, make any comments that are relevant to the scope of the document. Chase and companies will then go back. Chase will also make a short presentation on the GIS during that public meeting. They will go back and answer all of the questions posed during the public session, present the council with a final scoping document, which you will then adopt, which starts the next point in the process, which is the actual drafting of the EIS itself.
And when is the public meeting?
It's yet to be announced. Once the final language of the draft scoping document is agreed upon by all the relevant parties, we'll present it to the council, and then whatever week that is, you'll announce it to the public and then set a date for a public meeting to discuss the contents of the scoping document.
And do you know how they started doing the traffic study?
They have not started doing the traffic study yet.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Moving on to the Durkee Street development. Today was actually the 30-day deadline for any of the potentially interested parties to contest the Common Council status as lead agency for the GEIS. So congratulations, you are now the lead agency. Once it's finalized, the GEIS process can begin. So today's the deadline. So that is it for that portion of the process. We are also refining our submissions to the city zoning board and planning boards, and also to the county planning board, but of course, no formal approvals from those boards can be handed down until the seeker GEIS process is completed for all the projects. For the marketing, signage, and branding project, the wayfinding and branding tasks are underway. Once designs are completed, there'll be another public engagement opportunity. Then Board of Benner Group will be able to move forward with the purchasing and implementation of their work products. The goal is to have other banner marketing materials ready before the end of the calendar year. Other work products such as art installations and gateway signage are scheduled to be completed sometime in 2020.
I will say, when, since she brought up those things, I forget what they're called, banners,
Mhm.
and she said you probably have seen them all over the place, and I was like, I don't think I have. Since then, I've seen them everywhere, so she was right. Yeah.
Moving on to parking, we have received a site sketch plan from AEDA for the Arnie Pavone Memorial Parking Plaza. The total number of spaces that will be available in that lot, based on that sketch, will be 109. It's still being determined how it is best possible to increase the total number of spaces in the Broad Street lot. We had originally proposed 15. AEDA's proposal included 21 additional spaces, but they are taking now a hard look at the existing infrastructure and the proximity to the river to see if we can indeed get those full 21 spaces.
By the way, thank you for updating counselors this week on these developments.
No problem. The county is currently working on expansion and restriping of their Oak Street lot.
When are they starting that?
They've already started.
They've already
They've been clearing brush from the perimeter of the lot, and I believe within the next 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to be closing it down piece by piece to actually do the restriping and the
You'll see
repaving.
an item on your agenda, they requested to be lead agency status for their secret review. They're requesting the common council's consent to that, along with other involved agencies.
Yep. And per the city's seeker consultant, there was some debate about whether to include the county parking lot in the larger GEIS scope. Mr. Shackner advised that based on the facts of the situation, he would be comfortable excluding that from the GEIS, so the county
And
is
that should
doing that on their
expedite
own.
then that
But there
process.
still is a reference in the GEAS to this other review occurring.
Right.
It's not in a vacuum, it's still done within recognition of this other project.
And I think the county wanted to. No, I heard some county employees talking about that over at the county building today.
Mhm.
And we may want to take into some consideration, because they won't be able to park it in their lot during the construction. Do we have an idea how long the construction is going to take?
I have not gotten a duration estimate from county officials, but I can certainly ask them and see if there's anything the city can do to help them during that intermittent period.
And I assume they're going to do Oak Street separately from the county building?
Yeah, they'll be staggered projects.
Okay.
Yeah. Will be going out to bid for the renovations to the main campus parking lot soon. At the July meeting of the PPAC, we decided to bring the 3 respondents to the kiosk RFP in for final interviews. Those interviews took place earlier this week. The 5 members of the review committee selected from the PPAC sat in, asked questions. Each one of the respondents brought in a physical unit to test to see how user-friendly it was. We are currently discussing the results and compiling the scores from those interviews. We expect to have the PPAC make a recommendation to the council at their August meeting. So you would have that information for, I believe, your regular Thursday meeting on the 15th of August.
Matt, do either or any of the 3 proposals also include an app or just
They
use
all
it?
do.
Oh, they all do.
They all do.
Yep.
And there's some of them, actually, those interviews were fantastic. It took up 3 hours of our time, but
Yeah.
even more actually. But they were all very informative.
Yeah, it was well worth it.
It was well worth it. And some of them we found that we could actually do the app on certain places even where you don't have kiosks. Now they wouldn't be allowed to put coins in since there's no kiosks or meters or anything like that. But the members of that review committee did have a discussion there, and that it does open up some other options for us.
Moving on to an update of the CFA grants. The master plan for Harborside, that was submitted last week. That was for a grant about $109,000 The City of Plattsburgh Climate Smart Communities Certifications Actions Grant, that was $30,000, also went in before the deadline. And the City of Plattsburgh's Commemoration Footbridge CSO improvements, that was for $2 million, and that was submitted with the assistance of Director Ruff.
It was actually, just point of reference, I guess, it's $1,725,000, just a little under, not that changes too much, but.
And that's a water quality improvement project, which will improve the hydraulic capacity of the Lower Saranac Footbridge sewer to reduce CSO event frequency. Project will also decrease the potential for an SSO due to failure of the gravity pipe, which has been threatened by an ice jam. And what are the two acronyms?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Oh, I was
That's
gonna
a
ask
question
for
for
that.
John. Yeah.
That's a John Ruff applied for that.
And if you're finished with the CFAs, I will take over just reviewing briefly what
Sure.
the next bullets are for. Thank you so much.
I will say that by my counts, of parking replacement options, if if ADA is right on the Broad Street expansion, if we keep Durkee Street 2 ways, that's replacing 286 parking spots. Durkee Street's made one way by our best estimate, that's 302 replacement parking spots, so.
And there are
either
other
way.
options that are being discussed that aren't even part of this plan that look promising to me, and I'd be willing to further any discussion regarding those. I just want to let you know that the remaining bullets were discussed with Director Miller. Basically, I'm going to ask that Councilor McFarland and I, along with Councilors Kelly and Moore, as members of the Finance Committee, take a hard look at our recreation facilities, that we kind of clarify what our mission is as a city to deliver recreation services to our public, and that we further clarify how to support our priorities sustainably with regard to our budget. So there'll be more on that, and I look forward to the conversations and investigations that will go along with that. Now, just to make sure we have time for our guest, I'm going to just suggest that I have a motion to move the proposed agenda items to the regular agenda.
So moved.
Okay, can you second that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no opposed. So that brings us to old business. Any old business, Patrick?
Old business?
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall any old business, no.
Okay. And new business, I will just briefly say that I would like to meet with the mayor. We're gonna have our next Climate Smart Communities, I'm sorry, our task force, Plattsburgh Sustainability Task Force, and I'd like to meet with you, Mayor, about how we can begin to tally up some points and get the documentation going to get certified, our points from the state program. And that's about it, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, some other new business, I will note
Okay.
that a constituent has approached me, and I would like to put it on the agenda for our next meeting.
Okay,
I'll double check with her as well.
our next meeting,
The next
Okay.
committee meeting, so the September meeting.
yeah.
That she has this interesting proposal to combat public urination.
Okay,
And I also did get a call from a constituent who wanted us to present on possibly installing public water fountains at our public parks and other facilities.
I think I may have been part of that email or posting as well, and there was concern about conditions of
Right.
the
That was a
bathrooms.
part of our conversation earlier, and we're going to, Patrick and I have plans to take stock of all our facilities, including the parks, and assess how we can better provide services. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye. Oh.
Aye.
Do you want to hear from
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well,
I
let's
forgot
just
about that.
informally make that, okay, what do we do? Is that any technicality?
I don't know what the intention is. Is it a
Well,
presentation?
we
I'll
have
make
a
a motion to
guest.
vacate the motion to adjourn.
All right, now do it. Okay, thank you.
I'm Jane Desitel, and I was on the subcommittee for the livable community.
Do we have audio, Beth? Should she pull the microphone closer to her mouth in order to get the audio?
That's just.
If you can just
Is
pull
that
it down
better?
a little bit,
I
Jane,
can't tell.
pull that, there you
Okay.
go.
Better?
Thank you.
Is that good?
Perfect.
Okay. So our subcommittee, the first thing we realized we needed to do was educate ourselves on what the
I'm
other
sorry, Jane,
committee-
which subcommittee were you part of?
The
With
environment and health. So-
Environmental and
And
Health
Health.
Subcommittee
Of the
of the Livable
Livable
Communities
Community.
Committee.
We divided
Okay.
up into small
All right,
groups.
good.
Yeah.
There'll be 4 total presenters, and this is the first of 4.
Wonderful.
Oh, okay, I'm the first. Oh, okay. One of the first things we all did before we had our first subcommittee meeting was to go to the website and educate ourselves on what's going on in the city and all these other committees. Because at our first meeting, we heard, oh, there's a committee for this, there's a committee for that, and we're like, oh, didn't know that. And we had a hard time finding stuff, so we also wanted to be positive and look at the positive things about the city and not just complain about things. So we are hoping that some changes could be made to the website that would reflect what we do have here. I know there's a lot we don't want, and there's things we want and we're working on, but we already have a lot of things here. And but people don't even know it. And one of the members of our committee was the chief of police for the campus, Plattsburgh State. And he informed us that all of the venues at the college were free for the public to use. And we did not know that. So, and they have quite a few. They got tracks and ballparks and all sorts of stuff that's open to the public. And the website right now just lists city properties and what they offer, but it doesn't list anything else in the city. So we'd like to see the website open up. And I was looking at other city websites, and of course I didn't check all the cities in the United States, but when I got to Portland, Oregon, which is a bigger city than us, I realized, I was impressed. It was just an easy-to-use website for those of us who aren't, don't know everything about searching for things. And, I just printed out a few handouts here. So this is like one of the first pages you come up to. And it has a long list right on their homepage of what the website offers. And then what really sold us was this list of all the things. This is just for recreation, parks and recreation. So they list all these different things. We've got picnic areas, we've got boat launchings, we've got fountains, gift shops, museums, historical sites, monuments, roller skating rinks, where you can swim, where you can play tennis, all this stuff. It's right there on one page, and it's very impressive. And I realized, we have a lot of these things. We really do. We have all sorts of museums, we have all sorts of these things. Trails, hiking trails, walking trails, biking trails. And it really, you can look at this, and it really makes an impression. And then you'll see towards the bottom, those little icons tell you the name of the park, where it is, and all those little icons tell you that there's also hiking there, there's bathrooms there, there's fountains, is it handicap accessible or not? It's all right there, very simple to find out. So people we feel this is important because if somebody is thinking about moving here for a job or visiting here, what they want to do is look at the website because they're not here. They don't know what's here. And we do understand that a lot of our links are leaking to the North Country Chamber of Commerce. And once I got there, I was like overwhelmed because that site has like the whole Adirondack region. And if you're just trying to find out what's in the Plattsburgh area or close to Plattsburgh, because once you get here, you don't want to travel 3 hours to Watertown or something like that to see something. There's a limit to how far you're going to go. So, you know, somehow you'd have to decide just how far out you're gonna go. But here's a nice visiting page. Has activities, then they got like Portland and beyond. But it does link to, like, we would link to Adirondack sites, because a lot of people are coming here, they wanna go to Lake Placid, you know. So link to those sites. They are crazy about their linkings, and they link to so many people, and that's good for all your website. The more links you have, the more people are going to check it out. On this, this is just an example of parks and trails, and you'll see how they lead you right to more links. Community gardens are listed, environmental educational groups are listed. I mean, this really sounds like a very friendly town. If somebody's thinking about moving here, and a lot of people who would think about moving here are interested in nature and the environment, because, you know, they go, oh, the Adirondack region, and there's a lake, and this is like right in between the two. How great is that, right? So, you know, show that off. Let people know, you know, how close we are to the Adirondacks. And then there's things, partners and donations. I thought this was a great idea. So this lets other groups, even right in our city, in our immediate area, know that there's ways that they can help the city out. They can, you know, like we've done Sold Bricks, you know, things like that. Those kind of programs can be listed on here.
Jen, did you say we sold bricks?
Yeah, the
there's
Riverwalk
some bricks
bricks.
for the walkway, that's before
Yeah.
you moved your home here.
Before you were born, Patrick.
I didn't say that. Like I think for some of the benches, I don't know, I think there's plaques on the benches down by the farmer's market that a citizen took part on. And I talked to Mr. Matthews, who's in charge. The mayor told me that he was the one who's working on our website. And I handed him, you know, some of this, and we looked at the Portland site. And, you know, asked him if, before I went any further, to see if it was even possible to do this or not. You know, my concern was, would the city be willing to list, like businesses? Like, have restaurants listed that are in the city, have the golf courses in the area listed. You know, anything recreational. There's yoga studios, there's all sorts of stuff for health and wellness in our city. And when you're applying for grants and stuff, if they're looking on your website to check out what's going on in the city, you know, it's all listed right there. I think it would be to our city's benefit to list as much as we can. So he told me the biggest time problem for him would be finding all these different links. And there's a lot of links, like Adirondack Harvest. If you link to that, that will list you. It lists all the farms in the area and all the restaurants that buy local food are all listed on there, all the members with maps and everything. So there's websites like that for various things people might be interested in. There's museums, you know, the Historical Society, I know there's a list. They have a list of all this. History was talked about a lot. This, I think, is what draws a lot of people to our area, is the history of Plattsburgh. Look at the Battle of Plattsburgh. The people come from England. I mean, they're coming from Canada, you know. And one of the things they check out, I've done some genealogy myself, is I want to know where the cemeteries are, because I'm going to be wanting to check those out if I'm going to study my genealogy. So I go to Plattsburgh website. We have one cemetery listed on our website. There's a lot of cemeteries around here. And there's lists. Those lists already exist. So all you have to do is link to those lists. And, you know, it would not be that difficult. And just before we started the Livable Community Committee, I went to the Earth Day event that was down at the farmer's market the week before the farmer's market opened. And even I was just astonished at how many environmental groups we have in the city of Plattsburgh. Now, they don't have offices, you know, they don't join the chamber, but they're all here, they're all active, they've all got things they want to do. You know, we can link to them and somehow get them listed. I think that would really show that we are interested in the environment in our area, and, you know, we do take pride in it. So the next thing that I was involved in checking out was the beach. This is not so happy. It's a beautiful beach, and I took some pictures. You know, it is not, you know, I haven't been there since I was a kid. I was born and raised in Plattsburgh, but most of my adult life I lived elsewhere, and I've only been back here for a few years, and most of that time I was taking care of my mom, so I couldn't get out much. And, you know, usually when you go to a place that you haven't seen since you were a kid, it's smaller than you remembered. It's just the opposite feeling I got with this beach. It's huge. I mean, it goes on forever. And, you know, I went on a weekday, and it was mostly empty, and I said, geez, when I was a kid, you had a hard time finding a place to put your towel down. One of the sad things, that beach that long, there was only one lifeguard on duty, and in this picture, if you look up here in the corner, you can see where the buoys are. This is as far as you can go to swim. And that man's standing up, and it's below his waist. That's as deep as you could get out there. And somebody was trying to tell me something about the concrete buoys out there, and they can't move them back any further now that the water has receded. So, I mean, it's hard to get wet, then you gotta sit down on the, on the sand out in the water as far as you can get. I thought that was disappointing for a beach that's so huge to have such a small swimming area. If it takes grants to hire more lifeguards or something, should be done. And then I was walking down the north towards the state park, and you have volleyball nets up, which is great. And I'm not used to walking in sand, so it's a little tipsy. And I almost fell into this fence right here. And this is very dangerous. It's something I think needs to be immediately taken care of. It shouldn't be difficult. But this is what I almost got into. And it's right, and if somebody stumbles on the playing beach volleyball, they could land right into those screws sticking out. They're like 1.5 inches sticking out. It's very dangerous.
What are they again?
It's like a retaining wall, I think, maybe to
Okay.
keep the sand high and deep for the volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a beach person here? No.
Yeah, that was meant during the winter to prevent excessive erosion of the sand behind the wall.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
Yep.
And it's in bad shape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can take a look at it.
It's really dangerous. It's not just not pretty, it's dangerous. And then I headed for the bathrooms. These are the urinals. They're all closed up. Nobody can use any of them. I got permission to go into the men's room. Then the first stall I come to is this. The ladies' room, not as dirty as that, but there are a lot of stalls, a lot of places to change. You know, there's plenty of them. There's only 2 doors that actually closed. So, I mean, nobody's getting any privacy. That was very disappointing. Bothered a lot of people. And, you know, when I was there, it was a weekday, so most of the people that were there were Canadians. And I said, well, this is not very inviting. This is not showing Plattsburgh very well. You know, it's embarrassing. I talked to the Cabana. The cleanest place in the place was the Cabana. I will say that. So I talked to the owner and employees whenever I could get hold of them. And he showed me, one of his complaints was there's no longer information there of what's going on in Plattsburgh for visitors. And he said, I waste so much time answering people's questions. Where are the restaurants? How do I get downtown? All these questions that tourists would ask. And so he took me into an area where there used to be an information booth right next to his cabana that's now closed. He said the racks are still on the wall, but there's nothing to put into them, and there's nobody, you know, it's just not open. So, I mean, the space is there, the racks are there. And he said even if something quickly could be done, a handout, just to, you know, maybe list our website, you know, or something, a map of downtown.
Mm-hmm.
You go to other cities and there's maps. I haven't seen one in Plattsburgh. that the area restaurants and businesses, you know, pay in, and this company makes a map of the city. I know Saratoga's got them, Burlington's got them. Is there one for Plattsburgh? Isn't there? I haven't seen one.
I don't know. I think I've seen one for Plattsburgh before, but it was a while.
Oh, a long time ago, yeah, so I
Used
don't
to
know what's
have little
going on
paper
there.
maps that were handed out, and I think they were, actually, a lot of the restaurants and businesses.
Just the Downtown
Have
Business
sponsored,
Association
yeah,
put that
yeah.
out.
Yeah, so maybe something like that could be started up again, somehow some information put out for people. And then there's a bathroom too at that information booth area, and they use it for handicapped people, and the employees of the cabana can let people in if they are in a wheelchair. And the water is constantly running, he says it's been running since he opened.
Since he opened
Since
this
he opened
year,
this year.
or, okay.
Yeah. It never stops, constantly running. And then there's this big building that's falling down. I don't know when it was built. But it hasn't been used in a long time, obviously. There's a staircase, a concrete staircase that goes up to it from the beach that's all overgrown, and I didn't attempt to walk up and down it. And then there's this great big staircase that goes up into a forest area. There's the trees there, and they're mowing, and so it keeps the brush down. That it could be used for something, more picnic tables, camping, something like that. It's just an opportunity. So I guess what I'm trying to do here is I'm an herbalist, I'm a gardener. I like to plant seeds. So I'm trying to plant a seed here when you're looking for grants, you know, or grants come up for health, wellness. You know, you could partner with a lot of public health department, they may know of a grant. All sorts of agencies now are involved in health and wellness. And so there's maybe other ways besides just government that, you know, money could be had to make some improvements.
Really appreciate your effort, your interest, these photographs, you know, and I had no idea what your topic was tonight, but I hope you will
You
take.
didn't even know it was coming.
I hope you'll take some encouragement in the fact that, you know, from other sources, we've also been kind of receiving feedback that has alerted us for the, you know, to take a closer look at not only the beach facilities, but our overall recreation complex, and those kinds of evaluations and you know, planning are going to be commencing probably next week with Councilor McFarland and I going out to the beach and having conversations with Director Miller. So, I mean, this is wonderful work, and I'm glad we have Ally in you and your
Well, yeah,
subcommittee.
I live here, I don't want it to go down the tubes here.
That's right.
But, yeah, and I want to be proud of it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank
the
you.
presentation.
Thank you so much.
One thing I'd like to add is with the marketing signage and branding grants that we did get through the DRI, there's an interactive online map component. So while they will be focusing more on downtown, highlighting those amenities you described, it's not saying that we can't scale that above and go to and hit the whole city. So that is something that will be in the progress when it's so along those images that she
It's
shared with
wonderful.
you, which is like, you know,
Perfect.
selecting like, hey, I wanna find a bike trail, or I wanna find X, Y, or Z. That's what they're gonna be working on as well.
Right.
Nice, I like that idea, and I like her idea of like, having links to businesses, if businesses
Right.
want to.
And I was just wondering, I mean, you know, I understand that with your conversation with Mr. Matthews, that, you know, you have to come to terms with what your goals are and what your ambitions are, and then what kinds of human resources can really support that. I wondered if volunteers could compile.
Well, certainly.
Oh, and Scott wanted to say something.
I know, and we talked
Oh, okay.
we talked a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
about this too, and, one, with the committees, I'm working on getting those up. With the page like Portland, Oregon,
Yeah.
Beth and I right now are just looking at currently the website in the totality and
Uh-huh.
kind of figuring out the steps forward with that.
So using kind of that as a model.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
that and other cities, but then, once we figure out where we're headed with that, then, moving forward with, adding those links to the website. And with volunteer is one thing that Jane and I talked about,
wonderful.
You know, you could just put something in the paper saying we're expanding our website and, you know, get the word out.
Right.
You know, there's, for agriculture, you've got Cornell Cooperative Extension, you know,
Yes.
you've got health departments, there's Office of the Aging, there's all sorts of agencies here that have information, you know.
Really appreciate your effort and your vision for the community. Any other feedback or comments, questions?
No, but I thought that was great, and yeah, Rochelle and I are gonna try to get to the beach, what did we say, Saturday?
We hope, maybe.
Yeah, if we can, we'll try to get there sometime next week. But thank you very much for that, I do like all those
And we'll be in
ideas.
touch with you and make you aware of what our assessments are as well.
Thanks for
Okay.
listening.
On a different note for new business, I did come across a new organization that I hadn't heard of today, until today. It's the
Conscious Citizens of Plattsburgh.
Yeah, it's great, and they're actually they're handing out stickers if you they're asking businesses to voluntarily subscribe to something I know is near and dear to your heart, to not give out plastic straws or plastic silverware unless officially asked, and if businesses can, if businesses sign on to that, they get to put a little sticker in their window. So I thought that was great.
Well, you know, just as a kind of historical, getting some perspective here, that was the original Plattsburgh Sustainability Committee.
Oh,
And
makes
then
sense.
we kind of split into two subcommittees. They decided they wanted to go off and work independently. They couldn't quite jive with everyone's schedules. So it's really good. I haven't been in touch with them for a while. It's really good to know that this program is up and running, and you know, that was hatched way back in November when the Plattsburgh Sustainability Committee first began its work. That was the first project. And now they're off on their own as the Conscious Citizens of Plattsburgh, and hopefully they'll be part of the Climate Smart Communities Coalition, and through their efforts we can all work together and really put forward a lot more sustainability initiatives. But I'm really glad that they're up and running and doing this. It's wonderful.
It's great to see citizens take part and be active, and I know apathy is a very big thing these days, but it's
Right.
great to see. And Jane and the livable
Apathy and
communities
negativity. That's
Yeah.
not our friend. Those aren't our friends, are they? Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
So begin our work session tonight then, and ask
Thank
if you'd
you,
like
Ms.
to.
Desautel.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Would you like to have any additional discussion on any of our agenda items for tonight?
Oh, well, first I forgot to ask if we could have Director Miller's report posted in whatever fashion you feel is efficient on the website. I just think that the regular updates on the website are important. Okay?
I also noticed that Mr. Ruff is here. He could perhaps give us what those acronyms stand for.
On the grants?
Mr. Miller, Director Miller was giving an update on the CFA grant for the water, and it was perhaps better coming from you, I guess.
You want me to come up?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
What acronyms are we talking about?
CSO and SSO.
CSO is combined sewer overflow. It's sections of the city's sewer collection system that, where we only have one pipe that collects wastewater during dry weather, and when it rains, it also collects stormwater. So it's a combined flow going through that one pipe, rather than having a separate sanitary pipe and a separate storm pipe. There are protective devices installed in that collection system, so if we get a really big rainstorm and the hydraulic capacity of the pipe is exceeded, rather than backing up into people's basements or businesses, there's actually an overflow that discharges either into the river or the lake.
And there's a CFA grant to improve those?
For the CFA grant we applied for is to improve one at the commemorative bridge, the footbridge near the railroad track.
Sure.
We've done some sewer improvements upstream, which has pushed more and more wet weather flow downstream. Solved some problems in front of the McDonough Monument that were really acute issues that needed to be taken care of. But now all that flow is coming to the bridge, and basically you can't get across the river during the bigger storms. So we want to put some additional, either a small pump station, or we'll probably end up doing is put in a couple more gravity lines underneath the river with directional drilling, so that wet weather flow can now be conveyed, hopefully all the way to the wastewater plant. We might need to make some sewer improvements between the downstream part of the bridge and the plant to make sure it all gets there. But right now, when the CSO is activated, it's on this upstream side of the footbridge, and the frequency of the activations is more than we want to see. And we're expecting at some point down the road, the state's going to come and say, those are too many events now, and we want you to do something about it. So trying to get ahead of that curve, improve the situation, get some water quality improvement program money to fund the improvements. So that's CSO. What was the other one? SSO? That's sanitary sewer overflow. I don't know, was that acronym used in our grant application?
And the product description, it was, that's what I
Okay.
copied verbatim.
Yeah, the SSO acronym might be in there just for explanatory purposes, but that's not something we're dealing with right now. So probably in that explanation, there was discussion about collection systems typically have SSOs and CSOs, and here's what we try to do to make the system better in the long run, so.
No, we've talked a lot, and I know Rochelle and I have been talking a lot all week about like maintenance of our facilities and how some of our facilities have gone down. When we're getting these grants to fund expansions and new facilities, are there plans being put in place to make sure that when the grant money, after the grant money is used, that the city will be able to appropriately maintain these expansions?
Yes, and it's one of the questions in the grant application, how are you going to maintain this new infrastructure if we give you all this money to put it in? So yeah, it is part of our budgeting process, and we have to answer that question on the grant application.
All right, perfect.
So you no longer have the pipe below the footbridge if you,
We'll still leave that there. We'll add what we're going to call additional hydraulic capacity. It's probably going to be directional drilling under the river. The pipe that's under the footbridge works, serves its purpose. It's a really old steel pipe that we came back and put a new liner inside of maybe 5 years ago. So it's in really good shape. It's just not big enough to convey all the wet weather flow. And because it's hanging beneath the bridge, sometimes when the big ice jams come down, they actually hit the pipe or get stuck on the pipe beneath the bridge. So we're worried that that pipe's going to get torn off. So if we have this supplemental capacity, then if the pipe does get ripped off, we still can maintain flow into the river. If it doesn't get ripped off, then we've got all that much additional capacity.
could you, while you're up there, update us on the progress for some of the various other grants that you've been working on that are so tied to the DRI?
Yeah, so we got a lot going on. The Bell Filter Press project, 90% design's complete. We're gonna be having a workshop next week to bring that to 100% completion so we can get that put out to bid and on the street. That also includes improvements to the primary clarifiers. We got a WQIP grant last year for improvements to the Cumberland Avenue Pump Station CSO. That project is on the street looking for bids. We had the pre-bid meeting yesterday for that, so we're taking bids next week. We have to have that one done and in operation by December 1st, but we are on schedule to meet that completion date. The odor control evaluation at the wastewater plant is finished. The relocation of the hauled waste receiving evaluation is finished. We're getting close to completing the architectural evaluation so we can start having public workshops on that.
And the hauled waste is gonna be moved to where you were saying on the Cumberland Avenue?
Right now, we've looked at two places, relocating it to the north side of the plant so that we're not running all the big tankers on the south side where we're expecting all the development, but that doesn't get rid of the downtown traffic and it doesn't get rid of the really acute odors that septic can cause. So we also looked at putting it somewhere else. Cumberland Avenue Pump Station was a good location to look at that. It's I don't know, costs us $100,000 or $300,000 to relocate it at the wastewater plant. To do it out at Cumberland Avenue Pump Station, we're probably pushing $3 million.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, big difference. I can make the economics work, possibly, if we adjust some of the rates and implement some cost-saving measures that I think we can pull off. But we're also looking on a little grander scale and more down the road at where is the future of hauled waste going, and septage in particular, and what's really the best regional way to deal with that. So that's more in its infancy stage, but we're starting to identify the stakeholders and put some thinking and planning together to come up with some other locations that would be better than even at Cumberland Avenue Pump Station.
Okay. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other items in the agenda that you'd like to have?
I just have a question about 7A. The cones and things that they would come from, I presume, from DPW. And so DPW would be responsible for the charges for those?
The clerk's office would you administer these fees? How would they be administered if we did this?
Well, so I came into that conversation a little late, but I did speak to Mike Set and asked if they have, so if they get it there, because they're issuing them there,
Mhm.
they know how many cones are there, they collect the monies there. I have no problem collecting it, but then
You have to go two places.
right, so they're gonna go pick up the cones, then they're gonna have to come here and pay me. I'm gonna have to verify how many that they pick up, how many sections of staging, or, it doesn't matter to me, however you wanna do it, I just think it would make more sense. And I did speak to Mike, said they do have a way to collect the monies there.
Totally makes sense.
Do you think it might be a better idea to have all this set in place before we put
Well, I think we
passes?
can figure a way to administer
It's
them.
an administrative problem, that's not our bailiwick.
But what we do want to do is also make sure that, there's two different types of users, people that there's a fair amount of hand-holding. Trailers, a big issue, it's a difficult thing to provide to the public. But there's other things like the cones, where in some cases, like for the street drives, they come up and pick up the cones, they're relatively easy to administer. As a matter of fact, we're proposing perhaps to exempt groups like that where there isn't a lot of delivery costs, et cetera, in the DPW. We're trying to be mindful of the DPW resources in this schedule, because if the public feels they're getting this for free, but the DPW is running all over the city delivering these things, going and picking them up, wondering if they're gonna get the same cones back when they go and pick them up as they put out, et
Mhm.
cetera, that actually poses quite a cost on the taxpayers.
Right, well, I guess
Cover
that was my follow-up question. Would this create additional responsibility for DPW as far as having to set out the cones, issuing the cones, and then going back and
Well, it
doing
already exists, they've been doing this
Yeah.
essentially for free. One of the things that we're particularly concerned about is the stage, as you know, the trailer stage is getting kind of old, and we use it in the city but once a year for the holiday parade, but it's used all across Clinton County. If that's towed somewhere and breaks down somewhere, the city could be left with a telephone message saying, come up and pick up your trailer, and it might cost a couple $1,000s to go get it fixed, et cetera. And we're giving this resource out for free, so it just doesn't make any sense for us to do that anymore. That's what we're trying to address, is some of the costs. We're essentially subsidizing, not even only to the city, but to anybody in the region for these things.
And so this is a novel thing, this isn't an update,
Correct,
this
we
is
haven't
brand
done
new.
this before.
And I see it just says minimum, so there could be,
Right.
okay.
And we've actually asked all of our units to be very mindful of the resources they put in, and this was one of those efforts. We've asked you at other times for user fees for electricity and permits and all that kind of stuff, and Sylvia's office has helped organize a lot of this stuff. Just a little bit more rational way to try to do this in a more systematic way.
So what is the staging fee refer to, so if you have an event that's only gonna take up 4 feet by 8 feet of space, you pay 10, and then as it expands, you pay more?
Basically,
These are
they're the
actual
risers,
staging
right? They're
sections,
Oh,
basically the
staging
risers.
sections,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Didn't-
I don't see anybody from DPW to more fully describe it.
Would we also consider, I mean, if we have outside organizations that are having these requests,
Right.
and it's, DPW has to pull some of their manpower to do this, is there anything wrong with issuing a fee for holding an event for having DPW having to do this?
Yep, and that's where the word minimum comes in, because it could be more. We should point out too, there's other entities that will rent out cones and barricades and et cetera. And if individual groups would rather go to the rental companies for this, that's actually perfectly fine. We're not really set up to be a rental store
Right.
for county events.
But I guess, I'm thinking of looking at if our city resources are being stretched in manpower for these events, to have a charge associated with that.
Right. And for liability purposes, we couldn't attribute the setup to the volunteers, for example. Is that the matter that you have there?
I don't know, I know that, for instance, setting up the stage, DPW will often run out in a truck with the stages set up for them. Risk losing fingers in it because the stage is very dangerous
Right.
to set up, if any of you have done that before.
But cones, I guess barricades are the same thing as the stage, yeah.
And I don't think by setting up these prices, the city's has any obligation to provide these. I think it ultimately depends on the ability of DPW to take care of a request, and these are minimum fees that DPW would have the discretion to ask for more, so the setup costs are more expensive, et cetera. But we do wanna get away from.
But
the principle
could we potentially put an amendment to this resolution to say that there could also be additional charges per manpower charges incurred
Makes
by
sense.
city employees for setup and takedown?
Yeah, there may be additional labor costs associated. Makes sense. Have another minute or two to go. Is there any other discussion or recommendations for amendments? Should I just take a short little break before we reassess, reconvene then?
Okay, I can get my coffee cup out of your office.
Sure.
Or I can go, yeah. Just don't wanna forget. And I'll meet with, I'll coordinate with Beth, and then meet with you, maybe if you have some time.
Hey Ethan,
Oh, because this replaces.
do you wanna
this.
work with Councilor Armstrong, to set up that meeting for this,
Climb the smart points,
for next week?
okay?
Get with Beth on any meeting time.
Copy pages.
And, I met with Susan Fu, who I should convey to you in the email some of the outstanding concerns people have about, the repairs to me.
Surely must be done by now, aren't they?
Well, but they were, but there's some outstanding concerns and complaints. they may be having a special session.
Just working on something.
But here's something for you as the administrator. This Susan Fu feels as though, she first worked with you, and I mentioned John Harbaugh. And then at some point, I think I was expressing to my, he came to me and said, please tell everybody who's contact you that I'm the contact. Getting complaints regarding this project. So, but in the meantime, I guess the documentation coming out is some of the areas that water backing up and then cooling and turning into ice, some drainage problems, grading problems, sidewalks problems. And so, but her complaint is that she basically there could be difficulties with communication and questions and but don't say that part, but just that she kind of cut off from the conversation, this side, and she's still like code that showed that there was necessity.
Dean was satisfied that there was some, right?
Well, she, he she said,
I haven't followed that up with the longest one, but I remember him saying that he wanted me to contact her for that about 3 months ago. So I've heard anything ever since, so it's timely to.
yeah, well, I guess at this point, he has been the contact person, they have met with the company, they've taken some steps towards remediation issues with the
Do you think, I'm gonna bring this up,
That's where we are.
when we need to have, council
You're
discuss
missing one
it.
person?
I'm gonna ask the council if they have anything else they
Hey
want to see in
Scott,
these reports.
you get Matt or Patrick in here?
So,
He's probably in the restaurant. He's quite a character, that Patrick. You know what? Mrs. Carlin, this boo-boo was all my fault. This agenda boo-boo was probably all my fault. Okay.
Let's begin tonight's common council then with the pledge of allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here?
Counselor Kelly? Counselor Gibbs?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Counselor Moore?
Here,
Just one update. Ms. Desatella spoke to us earlier about website design, and I do want to announce that, as she mentioned, our office is working on website design and are also potentially, hopefully, being able to work with Clinton County on our shared services for websites. But we think we can do a lot better with website design. We tried in an unrelated way to get some information off the website ourselves today and found like 5 or 6 clicks later, we didn't seem any closer to getting the information we felt should be about 1 or 2 clicks away. So I think that is a big priority for us. It'll take us probably, 6 months to a year to go through that process, but it is a priority. But one thing we think we can do quite a bit earlier is, I've spoken a number of times about a one-stop place where people can come and get quick information and file concerns or complaints, kind of like a 311 number. We discovered today that New York City has such a number. It's website-based, nyc311.gov. So we're going to be looking for a pbg311.gov, and why reinvent the wheel if they're doing it very well. But that will have a place to immediately lodge concerns. So some of our constituent concerns, we can make sure they can get into a system. We've been working on a database today in my office, so we can log when somebody calls into a voicemail account with a concern, or goes on the web to issue a concern. So it's actually logged in and then sent out, and then a place for how it was responded to, and then our office can then actually start tracking those. So we're hoping, as you know, to do that in cooperation with the police and the building inspector's office. So we've decided just to design it ourselves and then ask one of those entities to administer it. So we hope that can allow this to happen much more quickly. So, Scott Matthews and Beth Carl and I are working on that together right now. So expect an update on that pretty soon, so we can get that going. I know a lot of the concerns you share with me are from constituents, and then of course I send them off to Beth, who then sends them off to the various departments. But it would be very nice to be able to track and see a week later just exactly what was done in some sort of database format rather than anecdotally. I'll update you on that as that develops a little bit further. And I should remind everybody that today's the first day of August. Get your summer and fall projects going, because very soon we're going to run out of time. Usually is how I start feeling this time of year, but beautiful day in Plattsburgh. Thank you.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on July 25th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councillor Gibbs, second by Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending July 31st, 2019 in the amount of $498,180.76 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Gibbs, second by Councillor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have in your packet the various reports, including, I think, a police report that was sent out most recently as well. So I do thank the department heads for doing these more detailed reports at the request of the council.
Yeah, and may I please add the report that the Director Miller gave to us tonight? Just if they could be put on
Included as a
file.
written report.
Yep.
I believe we're going to also have an update for the feral cats report later on too. That was sent around to you all as well, I believe. Are there any additional committee reports, beginning with governance strategy and city operations? Councilor Armstrong.
We just had our meeting this evening and a nice presentation for the subcommittee from the Living Communities Committee, and received some important information. And you want to add anything, Councilor McFarland?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so we heard from Director Miller regarding all of the DRI and parking updates, which will be on file and hopefully published on a link in our website.
City infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
Councillor Gibbs and myself met with Public Works today going over budget strategies, and we're going to meet again. It was very informative, and I think we'll be able to create some efficiencies that will help us in next year's budget. Anything to add?
No,
Councillor Gibbs?
that encapsulates it.
And that'd be very helpful. We met with a regular monthly department heads meeting and discussed a little bit the state of that budget process. Obviously, we're all waiting and concerned for Councillor Kelly and his return soon. I do want to delay my budget a little bit until he has had a chance to weigh in, and you all have a chance to offer up some things as well. But we're getting much closer through the good work of the Chamberlain, through some revenue improvements that have occurred since we last looked at this, mostly due to our expectations for sales taxes, mortgage taxes, etc. sometime next month, so obviously, or this month, so obviously, anything you come up with will be really favorably received right now. We're about $200,000 short at this point to that $550,000 target, if you recall, that we had to come up with, so getting much, much closer. Thank you. Finance and budget, who can speak on behalf of Councillor Kelly on that? Councillor Moore?
Well, unfortunately, Councillor Kelly isn't here, but, and he's sorely missed, but, we do continue to look at, I think everyone is going over with the different departments. I know public safety has also met, and we're trying to construct a good strategy for the 2020 budget, and I think it's gonna be well planned out. I think it's gonna be, meet the expectations that we have on our 5-year plan. I'm really impressed with that. It's pretty much on the money, and it makes planning a lot easier knowing where we're headed.
Do you mind if I insert into your committee report, our joint efforts as through our committees to review the Socrata Munis system?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and we got a tour of the software on Monday, and I would like to have a meeting to kind of follow up with you regarding that and see if we're in a position to make any recommendations.
Excellent.
Okay?
Thank you.
Public safety, Councillor Gibbs.
I have no updates.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councillor Mansell.
No updates at this time.
And MLD Board President, Councillor McFarland.
No updates at this time.
And your quarterly meeting will be at the end of this month, I presume, correct?
Sure, yeah, that sounds about right.
Resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, second by Councillor Gibbs. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's no correspondence or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bill allotted by the common council for the week ending August 2nd, 2019, in the amount of $625,590.45 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn in the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Gibbs, second by Councillor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This time I'd like to invite any members of the public to please come address the council on issues on the agenda tonight. There are agendas just right outside the door, and there will be another public comment period for other issues of mutual concern at the end of the meeting. Seeing none, let's continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves establishing the following minimum fee schedule for requests to use the following city of Plattsburgh property. Cones, $1 each cone per event. Barricade, $5 each barricade per event. Staging, $10 each 4x8 section per event. The trailer stage, $200 per event.
Moved by Councillor Ansel, second by Councillor Gibbs. Discussion.
I would like to make an amendment to this resolution and include the following. In addition to the minimum fee schedule, the city may also require reimbursement for actual labor costs incurred by city employees for the accommodation, setup, delivery, and/or retrieval of city property.
Do you have a second for that amendment? Councillor Gibbs, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item itself as amended. Any further discussion?
I gotta say, I'm a little concerned
I
of
am too.
there being so much vagueness, right?
Yeah.
Especially something that can be like added on.
And I'm worried about the potential for arbitrary setting of fees. I mean, we say we have a minimum fee, but we don't, give any parameters or kind of criteria upon which additional fees or an increase of those fees might be determined.
I'm less concerned with that because I imagine they'd be told up front. But the amendment, I just see it kind of being a little chilling to people. Like, all right, now I'm organizing an event, and I have 5 barriers. I'll pay $25. But I can see there being a chilling effect if someone is afraid that after the event they might get a bill for labor costs or.
Right.
Well, I think that, we can
I think-
also include language in there, but I think I see where you're going with it, but I think in all fairness that, when somebody does do something like that, they should be aware of what the charges will
I
be.
can appreciate the, the concept behind what you're offering, but I do agree that we need to have some kind of firmer language that, explains the kind of framework that might be applied.
I mean, you could, certainly if you wanted to do another amendment, just add another sentence that, groups will be informed of, expenses incurred prior to the
Yeah,
event.
because I kind of expected these to kind of take in labor costs, like, $200, there might be certain situations where the city does lose money, but there might be other situations where 200 more than covered. Yeah, I was thinking it would kind of even out in the end. I just don't want people thinking that they might do an event and being concerned, well, if I do this event, we may be getting a bill on the back end that we weren't anticipating.
But I think the other, that, costs incurred would be set prior to the event.
And I think that could be just administrative, but we have to let people know in advance
Right.
what the cost would be. We can't be sending them a bill
Bill,
after
yeah.
the fact.
Right, yeah, that definitely needs to be the case. There has to be full disclosure up front.
Yep, absolutely.
Does that need to be included in this language, or
If
how?
you're fine with just making it administrative, we'll just insist that people are informed of any cost in advance.
So what was the language of the amendment again, Peter?
In addition to the minimum fee schedule, the city may also require reimbursement for actual labor costs incurred by city employees for the accommodation, setup, delivery, and/or retrieval of city property.
Yeah, see, the wording of that like indicates reimbursement, after the fact of actual cost, yeah. Is there some way we can put in the city, may anticipate and charge for that?
I'm open to it.
Just instead of saying we're actual, say estimated.
City may charge upfront for estimated costs.
And you wanna include up front.
I just think it would be helpful if someone's getting involved with an event, I'd be wary of anyone that says I can charge you anything after the fact.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So I'd make a motion to amend it to, that the city may charge upfront, estimated costs for labor. Does that work,
So,
Gina? I don't know.
okay, so what we could do is, in addition to the minimum fee schedule, the city, instead of may also require reimbursement, may assess, or may require reimbursement for actual, and then just put it in such event, these costs will be disclosed prior to the event.
Yeah, we're saying like in the addition to the minimum cost, the city, may require an upfront payment for reasonable, estimated labor costs.
You're gonna have to say the exact thing that you wanna say when we get done,
So maybe
please.
well, let's decide on it first. So, in addition to the minimum fees, the city may require, a payment, for reasonable estimated labor costs associated with the event.
We're gonna need a written copy of
But I
that
think,
for
but
Mr. Carlin.
instead of estimated labor, I think you also would need to be a little bit more specific with what those costs would be for, as far as setup, delivery, and/or retrieval.
May I make a suggestion? There was a council meeting several months ago where there was quite a bit of back and forth about amendments and adding language to a resolution. And it caused us to have to go back a week or two later because there were some unintended consequences that just weren't thought of and
Yeah.
the back and forth. So you may wanna
Table.
table this for a week and
Or we can pass it or vote on it without the amendment and then put the amendment in a new resolution.
I'd feel more comfortable tabling it.
I think
So
that's,
the
I think
language
that's
is
a better
clear.
idea.
Alright, motion to table this resolution.
I'll second it.
Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Renzo, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Second.
table will include the amendment.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves Adirondack North Country Gender Alliance to hold a march utilizing sidewalks and festival from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, October 5th, 2019. The march would travel on Margaret Street to Broad Street to Oak Street to Court Street, returning to Trinity Park for festival. The group is requesting power in Trinity Park, and there will be vendors and tents in Trinity. A utility fee of $20 for electricity, a certificate of insurance for the event, and vendors, porta potties, dig safe permits, and health department requirements for vendors are required.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion?
I have a question. So, a constituent reached out to me about, an experience that she had had, and I don't know if it was this exact event, but it was something similar, and, because she's in a wheelchair, really couldn't utilize the sidewalks. She wanted to utilize, the street, and I don't know if that, how that could be accommodated, or if it could be
I
accommodated.
think that's gonna lead to the same issue that we just discussed. This came up last year, and that led to mandatory overtime and police presence, which had its own cost, which was sought to be collected. So then the negotiated resolution was to have it just on the sidewalks, which didn't require that extra police presence.
Okay, so
So
that,
it's a
that's the reason for it.
Catch-22, if you want
Yeah, I
it.
think
and
the
it's
chief
cheap, then it's gonna cost more.
estimated
Okay.
a couple of $100 for overtime.
Yeah, I remember last year for like if there was estimated overtime, we were asking for that.
They chose not to do that.
Yeah.
Because of.
Okay, I just wanted to ask in case that same person contacted me again. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves Susan Pellerin, Seton Catholic School to hold a 5K run walk and 1 mile fun run from 12 to 3 p.m. on October 6, 2019. Request to use the following roads: Use Oval, Club Road, Hamilton Street, J Street, Terry Gordon Bike Path, Nevada Oval, Ohio Avenue. Insurance certificate is required.
Moved by Counselor Gibbs and second by Counselor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves Special Olympics New York to hold an event known as the Plattsburgh Polar Plunge at the Plattsburgh Municipal Beach from Friday, November 9th, 2019 through Saturday, November 10th, 2019. The group is requesting access to city power, and there will be group members of the beach, a utility fee of $20 for electricity, a certificate of insurance for the event, and vendors. Porta potties are required. The group will have an ambulance available the day of the event, and members of local law enforcement have volunteered to secure it.
Moved by Counselor Ensel, second by Counselor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, common council approves SUNY Police to divert and direct one-way traffic in a westerly direction as in past school years on Ruger Street between the Myers Building roadway Ruger Street intersection and the intersection of Sanborn Avenue Ruger Street out to Park Avenue from Friday, August 23rd, 2019 to Saturday, August 24th, 2019 midday.
Moved by Counselor Gibbs, second by Counselor Ensel. Discussion?
This is for registration.
Even day.
This is something they do each year. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to revise capital project H8320.78 by transferring the funding for the line item of $50,000 for water lateral pipe replacements and adding the $50,000 funding from that line to the line for water meters for the electronic reading system per the request from the superintendent of public works.
Moved by Counselor Ensel, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to create capital project H5110.69 DRI streetscape riverfront for $2.9 million to be funded by a grant from the New York State Department of State.
Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves a request from the Clinton County Legislature to act as lead agency for legal review of Clinton County Government Center parking lot rehabilitation, and that the mayor be authorized to sign the consent form.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council authorizes entering into an agreement for the services described in the July 26, 2019 CDM Smith Professional Engineering Services proposal made part of the minutes of this meeting on a time and expense basis estimated to be $26,100. The project will be funded from Capital Project H 8320.73.
Moved by Counselor Ensel, second by Counselor Moore. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
I'll abstain.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Whereas the city of Plattsburgh intends to file an application for funding from Water Infrastructure Improvements Act for improvements.
I'd like to move the motion and waive the reading.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Ensel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Discussion on the item itself. This was the item that Mr. Miller briefed us on just a little while ago during our committee meeting. Seeing no further discussion, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
No travel requests at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or additional councilor reports?
I've had, actually quite a few people have brought up to me over, a fair amount of time, concerns of bikes, riding on sidewalks. It's something that I always thought was illegal that people just did, but apparently in Plattsburgh, it's not illegal. I think I was told by someone who brought it up the other day that the state leaves it up to the local ordinances, and Plattsburgh doesn't have a local ordinance.
I don't know offhand, I recall, I'd have to check to verify. I thought we had some language in our code, but I can't quote it right now.
I'm not certain, it's just been brought up to me, it just kind of, I just remembered it, but I have heard quite a few people complaining, especially with the parklets. We have like waiters, leaving restaurants, going to parklets or tables on the sidewalk, and I don't know if there's ever been an incident of someone actually being hit by a bike, but there's certainly concerns that when people are riding their bikes on the sidewalks.
You also have skateboarders going through too, at times.
Yeah, so,
I think most people don't understand that when they're on a bike, they should treat themselves as a vehicle on the road. And that's why they get on the sidewalk. They think it's safer to be on the sidewalk than the street. I think it's in part is an education issue, they're not educated on what the protocol was, so.
yeah, well, typically, if I remember when I used to ride my bike in the city and stuff, we would follow the same rules as cars for the most part. So I don't know what the rules are, but I thought I would bring that up and maybe we should look into that.
We should. Any other new business or councilor reports?
So I just wanted to bring this up to the council that we're getting reports from the police department, and if after looking at these, you think that there should be more information on the reports, if you could send me your thoughts on that so that I can forward that to the mayor and the police chief. So, and also, I wanted to follow up with Dean. We had talked about is it possible to either amend the fire code about fire pits or eliminate them, or a permit process or anything? I didn't know if, you said you were gonna do some research about fires being.
Yeah, I did, reached out to Joe McMahon, the building inspector. He had a series of concerns about outright prohibition. So it would be more of and similar to what we discussed as far as First Amendment and religious exercise, but also just practical concerns. So,
Wait, what would be First Amendment concerns on a fire or religious?
if there's some
Freedom of religion.
some kind of expression,
Burning the sacrificial lamb.
That's what I was thinking,
I
like,
mean, I can't think offhand.
burning palms.
So, in any event, he had some practical concerns about the enforcement and application and how broad it would be. So I can share those with you and maybe we can put our heads together and see if there's some other language that you wanna put together.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and mostly because I'm responding to a constituent who is very adamant about her health concern, about her health
So
being
if-
affected.
I mean, if
and-
they're, if it's coming from
I've
one
had a couple
individual,
constituents bring that up
Yeah,
to
I
me.
know you
know
have.
there is a mechanism currently in
I
the
know.
statute that they can make.
I know, and I forwarded that to her and,
Yeah, I mean, constituents, if you bring that up, will say nothing's done about it, and it's rather toothless. Or it's not toothless, but still nothing's really done about it.
all right, so maybe we can have more of a conversation at a later time about it. Thank you.
Any other items for new business or council reports? Next week, which subcommittee meets? Is it infrastructure, or was I wrong? Was it public safety infrastructure?
It's infrastructure.
Did you want a pre-meeting for us to arrange?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get that together. So if there's no other additional council reports, are there any additional public comments at this time?
Sorry about that. Scott Roos is back for you, Frank Essex. Something that came up at our staff meeting 2 weeks ago, and something that I see when I enjoy eating outside this time of the year, I do see the bike stuff, but the smoking on the sidewalks and stuff like that. So we were wondering if that had any legs behind it and how it was gonna be enforced, or if somehow we can come up with a campaign, and like I said, we discussed this at our staff meeting, where we can give out, like cards or educational cards to people, that whoever's enforcing this or might be enforcing this in the future, cards to people saying, hey, kind of like with the parking tickets, you didn't get a parking ticket within the first month, right? You kind of got like a little, hey, we're gonna be doing a new parking program. Same thing with the smoking, education, like, why we don't smoke on the sidewalk next to where I'm eating outdoors or something like that, but, something that we were thinking about.
I think that's a
really
great
good
idea.
point. There's no smoking at the church next door, and obviously no smoking in the civic building here, so what people do is they'll just go across the street in the park to smoke, but it's still a city property. I believe that our parking enforcement officers permitted to enforce or sidewalk-based code infractions.
But that
So maybe
doesn't
we
do
can see
anything
if
for
she
the
can do that.
restaurants at night or in the
Well,
Well, it
evening.
won't happen there, but at some point we'll probably have to do code enforcement more than just during weekdays if we ever move to a different parking regime. So we have been looking and contemplating expanding that, but you're right, it
We can
wouldn't help
deputize
for
Scott,
evening
yeah.
right now.
Well, and I would just like to interject that, working with Scott and Dana and Danielle on the project that wound up also including e-cigarettes in our tobacco prohibition in public spaces. As you might recall, they were willing to provide the city with signs written up to our specifications, but there had been, a concern about the resources needed and the labor needed in order to put them around town. So maybe, during your infrastructure and budgetary considerations, we've enacted a law that says no smoking in public spaces. How are we going to implement that law, and how can we bring resources to bear in order to inform the public and educate the public?
Perhaps we can get an update at the next public safety committee on how many of those tickets have been handed out.
Oh, that'd be
Because
good.
it increased the fines, and it also, made it, illegal for adults to smoke. And I have seen what Scott has seen, that it's largely, I don't know if it's unenforced, I guess we'll find out, we can find out, but, it's largely ignored from what I've seen.
I've seen just a quick visual, because I like to get out at this time of year and eat lunch if I can. I extend my lunch break, which is probably not good, but, when I see the parking lady walking by, and I've seen cops driving by, and I understand they got better things to do, but unfortunately, it is kind of just, it's the same thing with throwing cigarette butts on the ground with the straws and things like that. It happens, it's just kind of accepted. And And so I think education, like with the parking tickets and things like that, can kind of help to promote this and push it along. You know, whatever you guys need, you know, we can help you out with. Thank you.
Is that also something that we might wanna look at for next year when we issue the parklets?
What?
About having stipulation in there that they need to, as part of granting the parklet, that they need to also,
This is on public space.
on public space, right?
When he brings up a valid point, the biggest problem I have with cigarettes is the cigarette butts are the most littered item in the world. I saw Scott and several children.
Do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And go from Stafford to PHS and back.
Yeah, and
Very
a few months ago when you were cleaning up Trinity Park,
Yeah.
I mean, you had Ziploc bags, a bunch of them full of cigarette butts, and if someone's smoking a cigarette in the park and throws a butt, they could get 2 fines, one for the smoking and the other one for littering, which maybe we should have the fines for too. On a related note, I know this is public, I have gotten calls, and I know this is something we've brought up before, about more trash cans downtown, but also more recycling bins. We don't have any recycling bins throughout the city. And even at events, it doesn't seem that we have any, like during Mayor's Cup.
Yeah.
I was sick during Mayor's Cup, so didn't get out this year, but if I remember correctly, we don't have any recycling bins out there for things like that. When there's a lot of people drinking water bottles and stuff, it might behoove us to add more recycling bins throughout at least downtown and see.
I think Jeff brought that up. Didn't you bring that up with one of your livable community sub-communities that was brought up about why we don't have that? And it's because we don't have the resources to
Of course, right.
pick them up? Is that what it was?
Well, I would all but guarantee that if we did, even if not having the resources to pick up, they will be picked up by the public.
And I remember I brought it up before with the cigarette butts. You know, if people are still going to smoke, even though there's the smoking bans in effect, we should probably have some receptacles. Because I was outside of the monopole and I was counting cigarette butts, and I lost count very quickly because there's thousands of them. But you know, I look around there and there's not any place to put a cigarette butt.
Well, and I bet you Reality Check and Clinton County, Essex, Franklin could provide us with the information about the toxicity in cigarette butts and what they contribute to, you know, the contamination of our landscape, of our groundwater, of our, so I mean, these are all kind of, this is food for thought. You know, how do we tackle this is a health concern. It seems trivial, but it adds up to a pretty significant health concern.
I think if you up some enforcement, but then also put in some receptacles, so if people are gonna not follow that provision, at least it's not being thrown on the ground. I think that would be a nice start, and certainly
just have
signs
to
and
add-
education would be a nice help.
I have to add that I was contacted by a Canadian company that wanted to sell the city recycling receptacles. I just didn't get very far in that conversation because I know we don't have the money to buy them, but
I have
Anyway.
seen DPW recycling receptacles that have the Plattsburgh logo on the side and everything, so maybe it's just a matter of they haven't been put out for a while.
yeah, well, they should be in our offices.
They should be within all.
Well,
our
we can
city
have that
buildings.
conversation next week when we finish up with infrastructure.
Perfect.
Well, and we'll get points from the Climate Smart Communities Initiative.
Okay.
Any other comments from the public?
Sorry. Thank you,
Seeing
Scott.
none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Ansel. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out on this nice, cool fall evening.
Come on, it's not September yet.
I can't stay too long. I can't even. What are you thinking? I could use a Moscow Mule, alright?
Thanks again, Beth.
Wait.
Thanks again for
Thanks
all
for
this.
coming to get them.
I promise you I'll never do that to you again.
He won't listen.
Holy cow, these fire trucks are getting expensive every week, a few $1,000 more.
Oh, they're gonna they're gonna tell you that for all those repairs, if you need a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will. Tom's opening up his business this morning.
They used to say emergency on every Wednesday.